Yeah, so we're just gonna wait a couple seconds to make sure that our adjudicator Yvette is with us, and then we can start. Can someone contact Yvette, please?
I can try.
Yeah, go, Mark. You're on it. You're the man. All right, meanwhile, we can just wait and prep more, and we can be happy. Oh, great, Yvette's here. Yvette, could you introduce your preferred gender pronouns? Okay, I guess that's okay. I don't think you'll refer to our specific judges, so if you refer to us, just say like panel or something. I think that should be fine. Great. Then if everyone's ready, without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Prime Minister on the motion that is displayed in front of our eyes to start the case for team opening government. Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
Am I audible? Is it echoing?
Hear, hear.
Okay. Honorable panel, a person who does not have gender dysphoria, that is, they do not have the inner dysphoria, must not try to align themselves to existing social norms and propagate it. That is to say that we prefer a world where these transgender individuals do not choose to change their appearance in order to pass in society, right? They do not have gender dysphoria where there does not exist this confusion within them because whatever sex they have been assigned is something which they are in complete coherence with, right? But what the problem is for them in the current status quo is the fact that they still look slightly different from other men and women, right? And as a result, and hence, given the fact that society itself has this whole idea of how women should dress and how men should dress, how skirts are something which, like majorly women wear, etc. Those kind of societal narratives do exist. And as a result, this transgender person, like has this option of either like buying this particular social narrative and trying to change their physical appearance in order to pass, right? That is to say, in order to like be considered as this particular gender and not anything else. Now, the two arguments that come majorly from our side is the fact that this particular acceptance is never going to be a true acceptance. And the second constructor that comes from our side is that it just enforces the social norm, which is problematic for this particular person and which will be analyzed in very clearly in my second constructive. So the first constructive is the fact that this acceptance will never be true acceptance, right? That is to say that no matter what you do, right, like the amount of cosmetic surgery you do, or in order to like have like absolutely feminine features or masculine features, or you use Botox, etc., or even if you try putting all sorts of makeup, like the extent to which you can actually like appear to pass a cis male or a cis female is like very marginal, right? It's not like it's not going to be 100% shift. So basically the people around you are never going to truly accept you as a cis or a cis male, right? Whereas, so hence, whatever this effort you put into trying to achieve this is particularly not worthwhile, because it that true acceptance never comes. So in this particular process, you just end up wasting a lot of your money and a lot of your resources trying to get trying to achieve this kind of this pseudo acceptance in this case. The second problem that we have with this is the fact that we would prefer a world where this transgender person was, in complete alignment with whatever interest that they have, right? Instead of trying to like get this kind of social acceptance, because at the end of the day, like the social acceptance is extremely superficial, right? Like though it may seem very lucrative and may seem like something which you really want, but when you finally get it, it's not something which satisfies your inner soul, because it's not something like, unless and until it's something which is like representative of what you are, like it's not something which will give you long-term happiness, right? The social acceptance is something superficial. Okay, he considers you as a cis female, so what, right? But what is worse is that you're not actually expressing yourself in the way you want, because of in this entire ordeal of trying to appeal to social narratives, right? And we think that's particularly problematic. Instead, a better paradigm for them was to actually accept the fact that yes, I may look a little different, but that is totally okay for me, and like actually like proceed in like expressing their individuality in their own way. Furthermore, what basically when you try to appeal to these kind of social norms of what it means to be a cis male and cis female, what ends up happening is that you actually show a weak link, weak in your self, right? That's to say that you are affected by what society thinks of you, and the people who are like actively transphobic and like other kind of haters to this particular community, like use this particular weak link to attack you, right? So basically, you're showing a weakness that that you really adhere to social norms, and this is something which affects you, and that is something which is more problematic because that in turn will lead to more suffering for you because they'll keep trying to target this particular weak link that exists. Now, the second thing which we think is the reason why this particular transgender individual should not take up this particular thing is because it just enforces the societal norm, right? That a cis male or a cis female has to look in a certain particular way without understanding that gender, these kind of narratives are just social constructs, right? So on an individual level, there's no reason why you should principally align to these kind of narratives because they're not true, right? Like any individual can express themselves in any way possible, and when you try to co-opt this particular norm, you're just propagating it, and that actively harms the other community members, right? Which in turn fractures the LGBTQ movement, etc. And for all these reasons, we're very proud to propose.
I think the speaker's fine remarks. Now welcome the Leader of Opposition to start the case for team opening opposition. Here.
Yeah, am I audible to everybody? I'll just start in another
Here.
5 seconds if I'm audible. All right, thank you.
Here.
I'll just start in another 5 seconds.
Just 5 seconds. Understand panel, we believe that social movements will not be successful as long as you do not attack the core principle on which it is based, right? Which is to say that if people come and tell you that your human rights are pertinent on you looking in a certain way or not, regardless of how much you change yourself to fit into that narrative, and then try to convince society that, you know what, I am supposed to be accepted in other ways as well, and you do not tackle the kind of the actual bias that exists in the society, we don't understand how any social movement is going to be successful in their side of the house, right? Understand that as feminist movement is gaining more traction, and as it gains in intersectionality itself, we have like more people talking about like we have more women feminists, for example, talking about LGBT rights, for example, right? And hence we have like more people, and hence we'll have more people to talk about transgender rights as well, right? But we'll tell you that in a world where everybody tries to change their physical appearance to fit into the kind of social narrative that exists, no example will be there on like ops paradigm to point out and say that, you know what, this is a perfectly fine human being, and this person does not like need to like go forward and like adopt to a particular social narrative to deserve the human rights. We feel that the kind of biases that exist are completely wrong, right? If we are able to prove to you that the changes can happen only on us at the house because this particular transgender has the ability to drive discourse in that direction, we win the debate, right? With that, I'll like include all of my rebuttals further in my speech. So understand gender dysphoria is a medical condition wherein you don't feel comfortable in your own skin, you feel conflicted, which is why you go forward and change your physical appearances to get whatever, right? Understand that if a person does not suffer from gender dysphoria, the debate then becomes about the trade-off, about being comfortable.
Point.
who you are, versus being able to blend into the society so as to decrease the kind of prejudices society has against you or microaggressions that society has against you, right? In which case we are going to principally justify to you how, like, as a transgender person, what your priorities should be and why you should stand with the motion as it says, right? So understand what your responsibility and priority as a transgender person is, right? Understand that in a world where, like, society actively goes against people of your community, you need to take that into consideration. You need to take that into consideration why society goes like that in the first place, right? The reason why difference is associated, no, I'm not going to take any pure. The reason why difference is associated with transgender people are seen as misfit and not just as any other differences is because they see these people trying to fit into certain brackets and not being like and these differences not being like any other objective difference, right? In which case, if these people think that even the people who do not suffer from gender dysphoria find a necessity to go forward and change their physical appearances, necessarily they also think that there is something wrong with them, right? Which is to say that they further legitimize the idea of misfit into the society, right? Which highlights the discrimination and legitimizes the discrimination, right? And which is to say that as a transgender person, when you have the liberty to, like, be comfortable in your skin and still go forward and, like, prove to people how you don't need to change your physical appearance to be able to prove yourself to be somebody who is worthy of human rights, etc., etc., we tell you in that kind of a scenario, no society will ever start thinking in the direction it needs to, right? Society will still look forward to you as a misfit in the entire bracket, which is to say that individuals and transgenders who do not have access to, say, changing their particular physical appearances will be left aside from the entire social movement and will be left aside from the kind of narratives from, like, human rights and etc., etc., right? So what does it cost you as a transgender person, right? Understand, one, it sets the precedent that you can never ever, like, be completely comfortable in your skin, and the only way you deserve human rights is by changing your physical experiences, right? Physical appearances, right? What does that mean? That means, a, physical appearance first exists as a gradient, which is to say that every individual does not have equal access to change himself in a particular way to be completely passed in according to the societal norms, right? Which means there's a necessity for you as a transgender to go forward and talk about bringing down this particular threshold that exists, right? Which is to say that if people in that particular gradient also try to change themselves because they buy into that narrative, and individuals have to pay a lot of financial investment, a lot of emotional investment, but still don't get across through, are essentially going to go forward in a downward spiral where they feel continuously rejected by society while continuously attempting to fit in, and that entire emotional investment and financial investment just goes waste. And we tell you all of that is better spent on us at the house, where you have more agency, where you have, like, more time and more resources to, like, drive the kind of narratives against what exists in the status quo, right? With that, understand why society sees you as a misfit, even when as and when and how, like, you as a transgender person, when your responsibility has to change that narrative, that, you know what, even if I look different, I am somebody who is as capable as you in all other aspects, right? In which case, even in the best case scenario, if this individual turns out to be, like, pass this particular pass whatever the motion says, and in that and like become successful, we tell you even then the social movements won't be successful, because you will never have an example to point out to and say that this individual deserves human rights, despite you not seeing himself, you not seeing this person having the physical appearance that you associate his gender to be with, right? We tell you in this particular world, we tell you no social movements will be ever successful, and we are very proud to propose.
Yes.
No, I think she lagged out. Could you tell her to restart? I think her connection has an issue because
Yeah,
there's a.
I'll call her.
I think she refreshed her screen. That's why the triangle appears.
She's just reconnecting. Her internet went.
Yeah, I see her. Just whenever you're ready, it's okay.
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Here, here.
Just 2 seconds. Dear panel, a person's sexuality is very intrinsic to that person. That means the way you feel about yourself, your gender identity is crucial to yourself, because the way you feel about yourself, your adolescence, the way you grow up, the sexual activity that takes place within you, the way you perceive the world around you is a lot dependent on how you grow up and your gender identity, right? We believe hiding it is principally wrong, and secondly problematic in the utilitarian way, right? But an important piece of characterization that our opening half misses, right? Understand this. Community is very important for transgender people, especially the kind of communities they live in, right? Understand this. These are the communities that have fought for their existence when they were not accepted in this world. These are the communities that took in these people when their parents abandoned them and left them because they were transgenders. These are the communities that provide them similar people around them, and that gives them the comfort in their identity and tells them, yes, it's okay to be who you are, right? These communities of these transgender people gives them confidence, right? But understand, these communities are also the ones who leave these people when they go ahead and tell them that we don't want to be like you anymore, we don't associate with you a lot, right? But understand, for any of this transgender person, given how important it is to be let into this community, right, and to be accepted, this is because when you go ahead and distance yourself from this community that goes ahead and supports you, you don't have as many people around you to support you in a more reliable term, but secondly, you isolate yourself in this world that is not yet there for you to be as friendly, right? But understand more than this, right? For younger people who go through these phases, who are left out alone in their own struggle, go through severe problems, right? We believe, therefore, for these transgender community people, in order to go ahead and being able to associate with their identity, being able to stay in their community and gather the support of their community, gives them more confidence and gives them a happier life in order to go ahead and achieve whatever they want to do, right? But understand this, when you give them this community by them identifying as their identity, you also give them acceptance, which means now whatever they go ahead and pursue in life, they know that they don't have to fear anything, they don't have to hide themselves because they have this sort of backing around them, right? Understand this, right? Our opening government only say that we need to create a social revolution and everything has to be fine, but they don't tell us why as a transgender person you should go ahead and do this, right? Except saying that there are financial problems. But we don't think this debate is about changing your gender, right? It's about personating as somebody that you feel identify with more, right? We don't think this debate is about you should have to do this. This debate is about what would you go ahead and do, right? But understand this, our opening opposition goes and tells us how it creates a social support circle. We don't understand that how a person who does not feel comfortable, who does not go ahead and tell the world that yes, I am a transgender, will go ahead and fight for these transgender rights, right? We believe somebody who doesn't go ahead and accept himself at this person has the capability to go ahead and fight for other people. But secondly, these people are going to become idols to drive the movement. Understand this, dear panel. We don't want idols who go ahead around and who are not relatable, right? We want our transgender kids to understand that the people who they can relate to, who they can associate as people they want to look up to, are people who are capable, right? Are people who also accept themselves as transgenders. We believe idols should be relatable in order to work, right? 3 points of extensions from our side. First, mental health and long term. Second extension, how society's need of telling them and how it's a manufactured choice, right? And thirdly, how right-wing populism leads to these problems. And understand this, mental health and long-term problems, because when the transgender go ahead and see themselves as who they are more comfortable with their identity, the fear of them being caught or the fear of them being discovered because now they're personating as somebody else significantly reduces, right? Understand this gives them confidence, which manifests in I'll not take any POIs, which gives them confidence, which manifests into their lives in different ways, right? Which means that now when they're not afraid of like other people finding out who they are because of their sexuality, it manifests into them being better at work, right? At career, them being able to focus choice on other things. It also means that they have now the support of the community that has always protected them, that shares the values that they go ahead and follow, right? Even when they go ahead and form non-transgender friends, the kind of bonds that they're able to do form are better because they don't have things to hide it. But secondly, understand how the whole idea of it's their choice to personate somebody is a manufactured choice, right? We believe society has forced them to believe that this is your choice and this is right, right? We don't think that these people are ever going to be comfortable with themselves or ever going to self-actualize if they go ahead and ascribe to this manufactured choice and go ahead with this narrative, right? But lastly, understand how right-wing groups throughout the world go ahead and press on this issue of how your gender, it's okay, it's your choice, right? How transgender people are just pretending to be who they are and they can still choose to be somebody else, right? We believe this affects everybody, right? Not just your fellow brothers from your community, but also other LGBTQ people, right? We believe when you go ahead and associate yourself with who you really are, when you go ahead and acknowledge your gender identity, we believe you go ahead and like acknowledge yourself, and these right-wing populism and all these groups are shut down, right? Because now you're going and embracing your true identity, which means everybody's saying that, you know, you can change yourself or all these things are fake, are something that are pressed down upon, right? But more important than that, right, you don't have to hide something that is as intrinsic to you as your sexuality, which manifests in many ways, right? We believe a transgender person pretending to be someone else and always afraid that he's going to be caught out is a fear that's not worth living, whereas the world progresses and you being more accepted is a world where you should go ahead and understand that this is who you are and it's not a bad place to live in. Very proud to propose.
I thank the speaker for his speech. Now, welcome the member of opposition to start the case for team closing opposition. Here.
Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you're very audible.
Right, thank you. Can member of Gov finish her speech? Push the, yeah, okay. Chair, I think it's important to acknowledge that all houses in today's debate are unable to detect the urgency and severity and importance of changing your physical appearance, even if that you do not suffer from gender dysphoria, right? So 3 things I'm going to do today. First is I'm going to clarify back the debate today. Second, I will go on with my rebuttals, and thirdly, I will go on to my substantive, right? But firstly, let's just talk about what the debate should be about. Right. So the debate should be about whether you are willing to let these transgender people to face harm on a daily basis, in which they are unable to protect themselves and are being severely harmed in this society, right? Now, let's just move on to the characterization of physical appearance, in which opening government, also closing government, opening halves and closing government able to put on virtue in this debate. So firstly, physical appearance is the primary reason of segregation of the community and between the community and these transgenders, right? And the fact that they look different are the reason why these communities are discriminating them, right? And hence why we say that as a transgender person, we would like to choose to change our appearance, right? And they need to also acknowledge the fact that you do not need gender dysphoria to not feel comfortable in society. These people are severely harmed by society because of how they look, and they already have internal conflict just by the fact that they are from the LGBTQ community. Now, let's move on to. Let's just move on to. Let's move on to the case that CJ had brought into this debate. I think it's a very weird characterization on how they want to focus on how community plays an important part and it poses severe harm to these people. Right, this is very much true. The communities are the very people who are harming this transgender, and you need to note that this debate is an active debate. You need to act in the best interest and also in the way that is more viable for this person to live. Right now, they also talk to you about mental health and long-term problem. Look, as an individual, would you rather be harmed on a daily basis? Would you rather be sacked from work because of the fact that you are from an LGBTQ community, and the fact that you look more feminine or you look more masculine rather than having the opportunities to actually go venture more and more, to venture more job opportunities, and later on actually contribute back to your society, right? Now, so CG, right, and CG also talked to you about how gender is interesting. We think that there's very much tourism, and we don't want to, we don't think that it's very much important. Now, let's just look at how OG comes into the debate. So OG come in and talk to you about how individuals can express themselves and whatnot. Look, we believe that it's true that individuals can express themselves, but you need to weigh the harms of expressing yourself and also the harms that you get at the end of the day. Because in the status quo, transgender are being discriminated, right? With their physical appearance now, they are constantly being shunned and live in constant fear. It looks like you are being verbally abused. You are constantly getting intimidating threats. You are harassed at work and school, right? You need to weigh that out, right? They also talk to you about how they want in a world where there is everyone who wants to change their physical appearance, there will be no social movement, and you further legitimize the discrimination. Look, the debate is from a transgender person's POV, right? Hence why their points are invalid, because we need to debate on which narrative is more beneficial, right? Well, let's move on to my argument in today's debate. Right. So the first argument that we are going to bring from CO is about these transgender people safety and backlash, right? So we know that microaggressions are happening, and we know that transgender in the Muslim society are being discriminated. Hence, why blending in without being looked at as different is important, right? If we are able to change our physical appearance, we are it looks like you are able to access to spaces and opportunities without being gender profiled by the community. Like, this is especially harmful in conservative countries, or in cases where you are from a minority. For example, you're an African American and you are also and from the LGBTQ community. Hence, what changing of physical appearance innately changes the way that you live, right? Now, right. And another narrative where, and the probability of you being sacked from your work because the fact that you're homosexual is high and more likely than the probability that you are be able to be accepted by the society, hence, which affects the livelihood of yourself and it changes your life as a whole, right? So how do we then, what are the trade-offs that we are willing to take in this debate, right? So we are willing to trade off the fact that these minorities have to change their physical appearance if it means that they are being protected from direct discrimination, and they're being protected from further discrimination in the future. Hence, why we are never proud to oppose.
I thank the speaker for her speech. Now I welcome the government whip to conclude the case for closing government and for the government as a whole. Hear, hear.
Can you end your speech, ma'am? Can everybody hear me?
Here.
Okay. Just give me 5 seconds.
Here.
Mrs. Panel, three major impacts of the case which the side's closing government brings, three major metrics on which this debate should be judged. But before that, certain rebuttals, right? Understand that the closing government comes ahead and talks about, what communities itself are harming them. They have essentially strawmanned our case, right? Where Aishah draws you a complete characterization of how the LGBTQ community in itself is so bonded simply because they have been treated as outsiders by the larger society as of a whole, right? And we believe dissociating these people from their own community, something which Aishah analyzed to you in her speech, and I'll talk about in my impacts, how this essentially distances themselves from their society, and it decreases the kind of social support structure that they themselves have, right? But also when they talk to you about this idea of, these people will constantly face like backlash in the society in conservative countries, right? Yes, we agree that to a certain extent there exists a backlash, right? But we believe this backlash can only be changed in a circumstance in which the movement gains traction, right? We believe, one, in such a scenario, this movement will never gain traction if people succumb to these ideals. But two, understand how backlash in a society works, right? People will, cis men and the heteronormative society is only going to go ahead and accept other cis men, right? Which means that when you go ahead and when a person discovers that you were not born this way, right? We believe they will see you as imposters regardless, right? Which means that this acceptance or this decrease of threat will not be there, right? We believe even the marginal benefit in this circumstance is going to be minimal, simply because people will never accept you for who you really are, even in this scenario, right? But also understand, when you go ahead and distance them from their own community, you lose the kind of social support structure you essentially had before, right? And we believe this sufficiently analyzes Asta's argument, and Riba takes down their case, right? Coming to the opening opposition, right? The opening opposition talks about, how this movement is important and how idols, and Asta already talked about how idols need to be relatable, right? But coming to this idea of how they said, we should embrace our body, right? I agree with this fact that people should be allowed to embrace their ideas, right? But understand, if a person does not gain acceptance even in themselves, right? Which is to say that they feel like an imposter simply because they were not born this way and had to change themselves, right? Understand how this affects their social confidence in itself, right? A person who was not suffering from gender dysphoria essentially conformed to the societal requirements, asking that person to be this certain way, right? And we believe that does not lead to embracing your body. Embracing your body essentially means when you accept yourselves for who you really are. It's something which Asta already analyzed for you, right? We also believe that interaction is not exclusive to their paradigm. In fact, interaction with the community to understand their actual problems happens more in our paradigm, right? Simply because we tell you about how people will take pride in themselves, and which is for all the reasons, because of this, we take down opening opposition sufficiently, right? How we distance ourselves from our opening government, right? The opening government talked about the principles, but one, they never talked to you about the effect on an individual, right? Where Asta talked to you about how this acceptance affects the mental health of a person, how it affects like the kind of social support structure, the kinds of relationships, meaningful relationships, and trustworthiness they can find in their own community, right? But two, they also do not provide to you a mechanization of how the social structure evolves, right? How this social movement talks about, right? Where we come to you are three major impacts, right? One, on the individual, two, on the support structure, and three, on the broader transgender movement, right? Understand, for an individual, the mental health is affected, which is because they feel like an imposter, right? This affects their self-worth. This affects their pride in they hold in their own identity, right? Which means the kinds of human bonds that they can make with other people simply because they do not accept themselves, because they feel that they are playing an imposter at being a normal person according to society, right? We believe this affects the individual as of a whole because they cannot embrace themselves, right? But two, when we talk about the kind of support structure and aligned community, right? One, the kind of negative externalities which Asta already talked about, right? As to how this legitimizes the kinds of narratives which are propagated in the society, where we tell you how when people talk about how gender and sexuality in itself is a choice, and how this delegitimizes the entire movement, something which Asta talked about in her speech, right? As to how like the systemic violence which happens is now reaffirmed in this scenario, severely degrading the movement. And also it affects the people who cannot go ahead and accept this people, right? To understand, there are lots of people who either do not have the resources to change, and other or people who choose not to change, right? Understand how these people being seen as conformists to the movement essentially distances them from this, right? Which brings about which brings about a breakage in the entire community as of a whole, right? But when we talk to you about how this delegitimizes the transgender and the LGBTQ movement as a whole, right? One, when we talk to you about how this gender dysphoria not existing means you're essentially accepting the criticism of society, this leads to the broader society believing that they were essentially correct about these people being different and having to be normal, right? Which means that interaction in this scenario becomes a negative when they conform, right? When we also talk to you about on the three metrics, right? What does an individual require in life, right? And we tell you as to how in our paradigm, when a person goes ahead to accept themselves with the help of community and struggles to make it better for other people, in such a scenario, narratives change in the long term. The person is comfortable in their own identity and are happy to embrace it, and they have a social structure which severely improves their mental health and the mental health of their own community, which is why we are very, very proud to propose today.
I thank the speaker for his speech. Now welcome the opposition whip to end the debate for team closing opposition, for the op bench, and for this wonderful debate as a whole. Here.
Can you guys hear me? Fools. All right, give me a sec. I think a lot of the sides in today's debate
are neglecting the effect of the actor here, or what are the harms that can happen to the actor. I think there a lot of the teams coming from government are undermining the effects towards the individual, and I think that's why closing opposition takes this debate solely because we are catering towards the harms. And I'll emphasize to you on why these harms are very important to be taken care of, because a lot of the times you don't get what you want inside of on government, on both bench of government, right? Let's talk about some few clarifications first. Like, I'd like to clarify a few ideas about how this support structure is not going to be existing if you suddenly change your physical appearance. Because I think a lot of the times when you consider it back, that if you as a trans individual decides that you need to change your gender just for you to be able to fit into society and for you to be able to mitigate all the harms that are coming to as a trans individual, I think you don't diminish all these LGBT groups or LGBT movements as a whole. Because at the end of the day, just because you change your physical appearance doesn't mean that the LGBT groups or the LGBT movement suddenly disassembles themselves because they believe that they have no cause to fight for. Because a lot of the times, the reason why they still have, and I'll prove to you my speech right now, the reason why all these trans individuals still have a reason to fight, still have a cause to fight, is because they don't want the future generations of these trans individuals to have to suffer from the same fate. We have to concede to the fact that the current world that we live in right now isn't a wonderful place for a trans individual, because a lot of the times people are just aren't accepting of the trans individual, and people cannot affiliate themselves with you, knowing that you are a trans individual and knowing that your appearance are not normal to all these people who identify themselves as cis individual. Because I think a lot of the times they need to consider why the situation is vital. A lot of the times, I think in Aishah's speech mentions as well, the reason why you would choose to change your physical appearance is because of all the things that's going to harm you in the near run. We concede to the fact that, right, we want to forward the movement of the LGBT people. But at the end of the day, if you still face backlash, and in these current instances where all your trans rights are not visible for you yet, I think it's the safest outlet for you as a trans individual to just forego all your reasons on why you wouldn't change your physical appearance and then just change your appearance. At least it's for the better cause of this trans individual. And at the end of the day, you can fight for the cause of this trans individual at the end of the day. I think this is where we take the debate, because we actually clarify on why is it that it's important for you to change yourself and why is it that the harms are very imminent. Let's talk about closing government, right? Because I think closing government have a lot of interesting to say. Closing government, and I think to some extent opening government as well, wants to use all these trans person or these trans individuals that are living right now who don't suffer from gender dysphoria as a battering ram when it comes to fighting against all these people and going up against the norm, just by saying that, look, you don't need to change your physical appearance. Just, I don't know, take a few more backlash, take a few more hate crimes on your face, and then suddenly you can change the trans people because this is for the greater good. What you're doing right now is essentially telling these people that, you know what, if you want to live a healthy life, you got to suffer a lot more right now. You got to make sure that people despise you as a lot more and gather more traction in order for you to be able to make changes. I think this is not a good way, because a lot of the times when you create this kind of structures, you allow toxic behaviors to happen towards these people. That means you allow all these transgender people to be treated like garbage at the end of the day, only for them to be able to fight for the cause and not assimilate to society. On our side, in comparison to what closing opposition wants to bring, I think it's far better, because we clarified to you that we want these people to be able to assimilate into society and at the end of the day change the structure from within. This is the difference between what government have in mind and what closing opposition have in mind. Let's talk about how is it that they feel like it's going to be a lose of support structure. Because a lot of the times I think support structures comes even when you are a person who changed your physical appearance, because I think these groups will still exist. Let's move to opening government and what they think about the debate. I think opening government speak kind of the same thing about closing government. I think there's a rehash happening somewhere between closing government and opening government. And the thing about opening government is that oftentimes their speeches are always about forwarding the cause of LGBT movements. I think this is not the case, because we're debating about a person who's suffering on the ground, and it's not because they want to fight for the betterment of their identity. We want them to be able to live in society normally. I think this is where opening government does not cater toward the actor. I don't think the speech that they gave means anything for the actor as long as they said something good. Because I think we all agree what they said was good, but I don't think it helps the actor at the end of the day. So how do we differentiate ourselves from opening opposition? Because I think opening opposition only wants to talk about how they can obtain, how they want change, how they need all these not natural change to have occur, but I think they don't clarify to you on how is it that active change needs to occur, or how is it that you obtain all this natural change that you want. I think in Aishah's speech is better because Aishah mentions to you about how you assimilate yourself in society, where you are able to be friends with a lot of people, gain trust from all these individuals. At the end of the day, you are able to make sure that they understand you as an individual. Sure, there's a possibility that you will be found out, but at least it's better that you now be able to assimilate to society. So they'll give conflicting feelings towards this individual, whether they want to shun you or not, because you already make friends with them. That's why we're more prouder to oppose.